Thank you for tuning in to the Patricia Show. My name is Patricia. Please press like and subscribe and share this with someone who you know needs it. So, okay, this is part 3 of my spiritual life. So, I really believed, like I said, in the Bible, and I used to watch biblical pictures, love them. I used to read the Bible a lot so I could quote different things. And then the only thing I can tell you is like my path began. My grandfather had passed, and I really took that really hard. And I remember he had passed in October. By January the next year, it was like my spiritual path began. The seeking of the truth began, or seeking of truth began. So, no one, I wasn't even thinking about like the Bible, was it true or anything like this. I just started being led to different things. It had came on me about writing this book. I wanted to write this book. Oh, let me back up here so I could tell you this. Back years earlier, and I know that I was led and guided to this lady because I was on my way going somewhere else in the car. And it's almost like I went into a trance. This ain't no lie. And I ended up at this store. When I got to the store, I didn't even know, like, why did I come here? I don't need anything in here. And something told me to get out. And when I met the lady, the same thing happened to them. They were on their way back to Canada. But something kept pulling her and pulling her to this store. When I met her, it felt like I knew her all my life. I knew she was like my spiritual twin. You know what I mean? I don't know what that meant. I don't know if they were saying she was a twin flame. I don't know, but she was like my spiritual twin. Not physically, but spiritually. Now, this lady could sit there and look at me, and remember I said I used to always ask God, who was I? She knew. She could see. She knew who I was. Only person I had ever met that really knew that. But she said to me, I cannot tell you. She said, has to reveal this to you, and he will. And she went on to tell me that, she was a Christian, so she went on to tell me it's certain things you can't do because you're really close to God, so you can't do it. Well, I didn't understand what she was talking about because I just didn't understand. Sometimes when Christians talk, I didn't understand certain things or the way they put things. To my spiritual mind, it didn't make sense. You see what I'm saying? So I didn't really understand what she was talking about. But she used to tell me that. But I remember, like, we would be talking. Me and her would be sitting at the table talking. And all of a sudden, she would either grab her hand over her mouth or, like move in shock. Because, and I'm like, what is going on? And she would say, well, I seen the real you sitting here. And and she said it took me off guard. So things like that was just making me mad because I wanted to know, if you can't tell me who it is, who I am, then don't be telling me, oh, this is the real you and all these other little clues. You know what I mean? I just didn't want to hear it if you couldn't tell me. So she went on to tell me, one time we were talking, and she went on to say that I was going to write a spiritual book. And this book was going to be a really very high, with high spiritual knowledge. And she said the entire book, is coming from the light, which is God. And she said, I said, what is the book about? She didn't know. She didn't know anything about the book, but she just knew that this book was coming. So, anyway, she still wouldn't tell me anything about who I was or anything like that. But so I never did find out anything from her. So now years later, it did come on me to write this book. And I thought about her because, she had said something about a book prior. She didn't know what the book was about or anything like that. But So I would start writing the book, and then I would write things in the book, but some of the stuff I had never heard of before, the information that I was being given. So I would say things like, I need proof of this because people are gonna say, how she know this, or where she get this from, or you know. So then it would guide me to the information, or whatever it was I needed to know. When I understood it, then I could go sit down and we would continue to writing. I say we because it wasn't me writing this book. It was definitely the God part of me. And I would continue to write the book. The book, when we went so far in the book, it got to the point where I had to experience what it was telling people to do, some of the instructions that was in the book for certain things, to make you, like, God send love back to you, stuff like that. I had to actually experience it in my life so that I could say, hey, I experienced this. So some of the things I would write, and then I would have to pause until I experience it. And then when I would experience it, I would go and continue writing. Now, the experiencing it could be a month or two later, or it could be years later. But the book just would sit there until I would experience it, right? But all this book was coming from within. So when I first started the book, I thought, well, like, what is this about? Because it was a lot of stuff, stuff in there about Jesus, God. It was just a combination of stuff. And I remember riding in the car one day, driving in the car, and this voice said, this book is going to be totally and completely about God. And I thought, how am I going to write a book about God? Like, I don't even have, like, that's going to be, when you write a book, you got to write so many pages, right? So I'm thinking, well, God, that's going to take like a couple of pages. You know what I'm saying? Maybe 10. What am I going to say about God? And, and so it just kept telling me the entire book was going to be about God. So I remember putting the book down for a while, but I did not see how that was going to happen, because I didn't know enough about God to write this whole book, okay? Or write a book, where you got to have so many pages in order to publish. You can't publish the book with just 10 pages. I guess you could, but I don't really think so. You need to give people some information, really solid information. So anyway, things start opening up to me more and more and more. So then I was led into the Catholic encyclopedia, which I never knew they even had. And I just started running into a lot of information that started coming to me that I didn't know about. Like, I couldn't have went and got it myself. And some of the stuff, it just was weird, even how I got it. I could get information about one thing, start reading it. It had nothing to do with what I was looking up. And then that, in turn, would lead me to whatever it was I was trying to find. But all of the information that I was given, I was able to verify it. Some of it I verified through ancient texts. Some of the stuff was verified through other researchers. They had did a lot of research. And I checked several researchers to see if they all came up with the same thing. So it was just different ways to how I could feel comfortable in myself, feel like, okay, I could release this, you know what I mean, this information. And then some of the other stuff had to be demonstrated. I guess you would say, like, demonstrated. But but it was coming together. In October 2012, I used to go to the library. I used to go to the bookstore all the time and stay in there for hours. I could get to the bookstore at 1 o'clock in the evening and not come out of the bookstore until they were getting ready to close, because I'm sitting there reading through different spiritual books and stuff until I pick the one that I actually want to buy and take home with me. So this was a really in-depth process where I was doing an awfully lot of, researching and stuff. So as I, continued to research to document different things in the book, in October of 2012, I was getting ready to go to the bookstore and I heard this voice say to me, no more bookstores. Now everything was going to be taught from within. So I was to read no more books. And I would ask questions and it would come from within. I knew that meant my God self would start teaching me now. The first thing the God self came out to teach me was about God. That process about God or that information, I'm going to say, took about a year for me to actually consume, dissolve, and get it, because there were so many other beliefs in my subconscious mind that I didn't even know that was there about God, that I consciously didn't know I believed about God, but it was there. And like, for instance, let me give you one. Like, for instance, that God was sitting on a throne. Like, I never intelligently believed that or thought that in any way, shape, or form. But yet my actions were showing that I did believe that, and that was in my subconscious mind, that God was somewhere sitting on the throne watching us. You know what I mean? Because I used to tell people, like, God can't. When other people, clients would tell me like they felt abandoned by God, I would say, well, God, how can God abandon you? It's a part of you. I would say, you must think he's sitting up on a throne. He's not. You know what I mean? So this was just really, I just couldn't believe I believed that. And then it went on to explain to me that when you're being taught something in society and the images are there and you're seeing these different images, you're taking all that stuff into your subconscious mind. Rather, it doesn't matter that somebody didn't sit down and actually teach you this. You see what I mean? You're absorbing all these images and dialogue out here in the environment, and it's all getting in your subconscious mind. This is what you've picked up from that there is this deity who is watching over everybody. Okay. So after all of that, then I started kind of getting angry because I started, feeling like, they were releasing information. All the information that I was getting was like the society was releasing information about God that absolutely and totally was not true. But they wanted you to believe God the way they wanted you to believe God in order to keep people in and keep you in control. So I started, like, not liking that, obviously getting angry, like, oh my goodness, I wouldn't even have this up here. And why do they always show Jesus being crucified? That's not his message. That's not the message that Jesus was trying to give. But yet this is what they're showing. They always show him, where you're feeling these emotional, how he was treated, but you're not getting the true teaching, because they're keeping the true teaching from you and keeping you in this emotional state, how he was beaten and, things like that. So anyway, just all that part really opened up to me, right? And I started understanding more what society was trying to do and that they weren't teaching the truth. So when all of my false belief began to come out of my subconscious mind, and that took a year, then I could grasp and understand about what was true about God. When that happened, I remember thinking, because then more and more information I was being given about God. And then I would test it. Like I said, some of it was just a matter of knowing where God is, sending him love, and then having his love flood my world. You know what I mean? That was some of the demonstration, but it was a lot of different demonstration. But the point is that I was beginning, then I really, I could see that, oh yeah, this book, I can narrow this book down to be only about God, which they had told me years before. And I was slowly disagreeing with. And I'm like, now, yes, this book could just be about God, and it could fill an entire book. So, let me go to another part Thank you so much for tuning in to the Patricia Show. That's the end of this show. We're at our max. Bye bye.